Welcome to This Explainer. Close your eyes for a second and picture the industrial heart of Dayton, Ohio. You know the vibe: concrete, diesel exhaust, and the constant heavy hum of the supply chain. Well, today we are completely stripping away those glossy pitch decks and polished highlight reels. We're getting into the gritty, blue-collar reality of buying a distressed logistics company. This isn't some textbook theoretical exercise. This is a boots-on-the-ground look at exactly what happens when you sign your name, wire the money, and step straight into an absolute operational disaster. So if you've ever, romanticized the idea of buying a failing business to turn it around, you absolutely need to see what that actually takes.
Our story kicks off with the wire transfer, $1.1 million. That was the price tag for Midland Freight and Storage. Now, on the surface, for an established logistics and warehousing gig, one with physical assets and actual client accounts, a seven-figure valuation might sound like a pretty solid entry point, right? You wire the cash, you get the keys, and you assume, okay, I've got a foundation to build on here. But man, in the world of distressed acquisitions, that purchase price is usually just the cover charge for a nightmare.
Because almost the second the ink dried, the brutal reality hit. Along with the keys to the warehouse, the new owner inherited a massive $187,000 in hidden debt. Just let that sink in. Day one, hour one, and you're already nearly $200,000 in the hole. And no, this wasn't neatly mapped out in the initial financial disclosures. It was the suffocating weight, just lying in wait, instantly threatening to completely sink the operation before the new management even had a chance to set up their desks.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because honestly, the debt wasn't even the scariest part. It was the ticking clock. 11. That is the exact number of days this company had left before payroll completely ran dry. We're not talking 11 weeks or 11 months. 11 days. 11 days until the drivers, the warehouse guys, the admin staff, everyone stops getting paid. And look, if you know the logistics industry, you know the golden rule. If your drivers don't get paid on Friday, your trucks do not move on Monday. It is literally that simple. The whole business was a week and a half away from total collapse.
And how exactly was this apocalyptic news delivered? Well, it wasn't buried in some Excel spreadsheet. It was the literal face-to-face greeting from the company's dispatcher. Just imagine that. Walking through the doors on your very first morning as the boss, and the dispatcher looks you dead in the eye and says, "You have 11 days before payroll runs out." What makes that quote so incredibly wild is that this exact same dispatcher famously took a full year just to string together two meaningful sentences for the new owner. But on day one, he made those words count. The clock was officially ticking.
Section 1. The Day 1 Disaster. Buying a Broken Dream.
And this brilliantly illustrates that deadly gap between a slick seller's pitch and the cold, hard truth on the ground. On paper, Midland Freight boasted 12 trucks. In reality, only 8 of them could actually start. 4 were basically just oversized paperweights sitting out in the lot. But honestly, far more dangerous than some busted trucks were the legal landmines. The buyer expected 0 compliance issues. The actual reality? 2 hidden federal DOT, that's Department of Transportation, violations. In the trucking world, federal DOT violations are fatal. They are massive red flags that can get your operating authority revoked entirely, literally shutting you down overnight.
To truly wrap your head around the depths of this distress, you've got to look past the balance sheets and see the human toll. The previous owner, he wasn't some fat cat CEO skimming profits off the top, not at all. He was a broken guy who hadn't been able to pay himself a single dime in salary for 7 straight months. He was dragging himself into the office every single morning simply because he needed somewhere to go. The business had totally hollowed him out. That right there is the tragic human reality of a failing small business, and it's the exact environment the new owner walked right into.
Section 2. Triage and Cash Flow Survival. The 48-hour save.
The immediate do-or-die answer was invoice factoring. If you're not familiar with how that works, factoring is basically when you sell your unpaid invoices to a third party to get cash right now, instead of waiting 30 or 60 agonizing days for your clients to cut a check. They turn to Riviera Finance. Step 1, submit the invoice. Step 2, Riviera hands over 85 cents on the dollar immediately. Now sure, they took a painful 15% haircut on their hard-earned revenue, but step 3 is all that mattered. That instant cash injection was the only thing that allowed them to meet that terrifying 11-day payroll deadline. They sacrificed their margins for pure oxygen, and it kept the company breathing.
But here's the thing. You can't just throw money at a disorganized machine. You actually have to see what the machine is doing. right? So they immediately slapped together a survival tech stack to stabilize the absolute chaos. Samsara GPS was brought in for real-time fleet tracking, finally getting eyes on the trucks. WEX fleet cards locked down fuel management to stop the bleeding at the diesel pump. QuickBooks obviously brought some much-needed transparency to the financials, and crucially, running an aggressive internal audit using FMCA and DOT compliance standards is what finally dragged those two hidden, business-killing federal violations into the light so they could actually be fixed.
Section 3. Fixing operations in retention. The trenches.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the pure psychology behind it. See, one of the biggest reasons Midland was failing was because their contracts were literally underwater. They were actively losing money every single time they moved a load for certain clients. Insane, right? So the most dreaded moment was the Harman manufacturing call. The new owner had to pick up the phone, call a major client, and flat out tell them their rates were going up immediately. It's terrifying because you risk the client just walking away entirely. But the fundamental golden rule of business turnaround is this: you absolutely cannot be afraid to lose a client that is actively bankrupting you.
And while we're in the trenches talking about the gritty math of this business, let's look at the reality of driver retention. A seasoned driver came in wanting a raise of 7 cents per mile. Now, to a tight-fisted owner desperately trying to save cash, 7 cents a mile stretched across thousands of miles sounds pretty expensive. But look at the alternatives. If you let that veteran driver walk away over 7 cents, the actual cost of recruiting, hiring, and training a new CDL replacement, it's roughly $12,000. Plus, a new driver brings a massive risk of operational failure and delays. Actually, scratch that. It's not just a risk, it's almost guaranteed in the short term. Fighting over pennies when replacing a guy costs 12 grand is literally the fastest way to stay broke.
Inside the warehouse, it was the exact same story. Modernizing, outdated, manual chaos. By ripping out the old pen and paper, heavily fragmented processes and plugging in 3PL Central, which is a modern warehouse management system, the entire operational flow just shifted overnight. This wasn't just a software upgrade. This was about saving everyone's sanity. It completely transformed the daily reality for the floor supervisor. It took them from a reactive, hair-on-fire, stressful environment into a streamlined, predictable system where inventory could actually be tracked and managed at scale. A real game changer.
Section 4. Winning the big contract. From triage to triumph.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the final, defining phase of our story. We've gone from the sheer cold panic of an 11-day ticking clock, through the gritty trenchwork of operations and tech stacks, and now we arrive at the payoff, the reputation recovery and the scale. This timeline maps out an incredible chronological victory. Back on day 1, Midland Freight had a garbage industry reputation, maybe a 3 out of 10 on a good day. Clients simply didn't trust them. But by month 6, the new management leaned heavily into aggressive transparency. They started handing their clients monthly performance scorecards, essentially saying, hey, here is exactly how we performed, the good, the bad, and the ugly. That kind of radical honesty rebuilt trust from the ground up. And by month 12, that hard-won trust culminated in winning a massive Cleveland e-commerce contract, literally the single largest account in the company's entire history, from the absolute brink of death to market dominance in just 1 year.
Which brings us to the ultimate question. We look at all this massive success at month 12, but remember, every bit of it depended on surviving those initial brutal constraints. $1.1 million out the door, staggering hidden debt, broken down trucks, underwater contracts, and a dispatcher staring you down telling you the money runs out in less than 2 weeks. It is so easy to watch the highlight reel of a turnaround and think, yeah, I could do that. I have what it takes. But looking at the gritty, blue-collar reality we've just unpacked together, could you survive the first 11 days?